All righty, boys and girls, welcome back to another jubilant episode, a festive episode of the Red, White, Claret, and Blue Show with your host, myself, Alex Baquero, and Christopher, Mr. Savoy Condit, your American villain voices, as always, serving up the lukewarmiest of lukewarm opinions in this most warm and festive of seasons. Christopher, did you understand the nickname that I just gave you?
I thought I did. Is that a reference? No, never mind. No, I don't. I don't have it.
Okay. So let me lay a little history on you, my friend. There's a hotel in London called the
Yes.
Savoy Hotel,
Yep.
and they have quite possibly the bar that has literally written the book on the modern cocktail. Many famous cocktails go back to one bartender there. Craddock, I believe was his name, who invented a lot of the origins of major cocktails that we drink today. You, my friend, senior mixologist of the Red, White, Claret, and Blue Show that you are, have invented something new that I will allow you to share with the universe right now. That'll be my gift to you as this holiday season approaches.
I did not invent anything new, for the record, but I do. There's a gin and ginger is a classic cocktail.
Remember, Chris, no free ads.
Right? No, a gin and ginger is a classic cocktail.
Yep. I just didn't want you naming the brand of
Gotcha.
ginger ale that you
Gotcha.
use.
There is a ginger ale that has a splash of fruit here in the States, and it may be overseas. I don't know, but there's a brand of ginger ale that has a splash of cherry in ginger ale, and if you add a splash of cherry ginger ale to your gin and ginger, you get this lovely cocktail. If you're watching on YouTube, like, follow, subscribe, all the things here below us. But you get this lovely cocktail, which I am calling Christmas Cheer because it's got a very festive pinkish red hue to it. And gin and ginger, to me, in this time of season, is sort of like an association of flavors, I guess, for this time of year for me. So it's a lovely cocktail. I started having it a few days ago once I was healthy again, after all of the mess at my house. But I'm having one here now as you and I record this podcast to talk about a big win over United and hopefully a big win coming up here against Chelsea.
Chris, you don't get to make transitions.
It was a terrible transition.
In fairness, we're still in the intro now.
It was terrible.
If you were to do the Savoy version of that cocktail, I believe you would probably do gin. I would say a ginger syrup, some cherry hearing, and probably a spritz of either seltzer or prosecco. I'm not sure which would be.
Yeah, you need something with a sparkle.
Too light for that. Yeah, you need something to light up the night Christmas sky. Chris, it was great to see you this Saturday. We had a lovely time in the pub with the Raleigh Villains, and we're gonna get into this in a second. But most importantly, I'm just glad that you're feeling better because oh my God, were you in rough shape last week?
Sure was. It was a tough week at the Condit house, as I think I said to you privately. But just to refresh everybody, my daughter got strep throat on Thursday. Saturday, my son got the flu. We thought it was strep throat. He tested negative for strep throat, positive for the flu. That's fun. Then when we recorded on Monday night, I was starting to feel not so great. And we figured it was the flu. And it was very much the flu, as you guys saw on the recordings that week when we released them. I was consistently worse throughout the week. And then come Thursday morning at 11, things kind of broke, 11 a.m. And I felt much better. But it was a long week. And then, I forgot to mention that my daughter also had a reaction to the medicine that she had to take for strep throat. And my wife, thank you, Bridget. Thank you, Bridget.
Thank you, Bridget.
Because I was in bed with a fever and she was just dealing with all of this as she had to take, not we, I didn't do anything. She had to take my daughter to the doctor for the reaction to the medicine for her strep throat. So it was just one thing after another. And knock on wood, we are all through it, and we're going to be healthy and good for the holiday season here.
You love to hear it. Well, Chris, I'm glad to hear that the Condits are going to attack Christmas with gusto. We right now are about 3.5 hours away from Festivus here in the United States East Coast. But there will be no airing of grievances on this show, Chris, because there is nothing to complain about as a Villa fan. And nor was there, well, there are some things because we are always lukewarm. We will talk about a few complaints on Sunday, but really can't complain in the end because we finally beat Manchester United again, second time in 50 some odd tries, no joke. So Chris, tactical setup, I think we kind of nailed it. Emmy back, no Pau Torres. Yori continues at the 10. I'm I won't say perplexed. I'm pleasantly surprised to see that this is working because I think bar maybe one or two instances last year, this was a lineup that largely didn't work. You know, Yori didn't really have the athleticism, the dynamism that some of our number 10s otherwise had. And it felt like we were really missing something in attack when we needed to move him into that position. This year, not at all. It is clicking, it is humming, and honestly, I don't see us changing this lineup anytime soon. What about you?
I agree, and I think the reason for I don't want to call it resurgence because there was never a initial instance where this really worked. I think there are two reasons why this lineup is more effective this season than last, and it's because Onana is more comfortable as a defender and in possession of the ball, so that's part of it. And second is right now, as we sit here on December 22nd, where we're recording, I don't think there's a more confident player in England than Morgan Rogers in the midfield. So that takes some of the pressure, creative pressure, and so to speak, athletic dynamism, like you said, off of off of Yuri Tielemans, because Morgan Rogers right now is drawing so much attention and so many defenders that Tielemans is having a little bit better of a time in terms of his ability to carry the ball through the midfield or to make a play through the midfield. Also, I think Tielemans himself is just more comfortable in that role. That's part of it too. But it helps to have so much attention being paid to somebody else that's playing in that attacking three along with you. And I think that this lineup right now gives you so much flexibility. You have so many options coming with the players that you have on the bench, where if and when Barkley gets healthy, you have him available. You have other players you can bring in and rotate guys, move guys back, most notably Tielemans in that spot, where we are kind of spoiled for choice a little bit in the midfield at the moment. And it's a good thing to see. But this lineup right now, mainly because of Tielemans' ability to pick a pass and to hold the ball in the midfield, and Morgan Rogers' confidence and ability to attack, along with Onana's ability to hold the ball, play a pass, and be confident in the defending third in possession. The defending half in possession is the biggest reason why this has been so successful. So you have to credit everybody across the board on it, in my opinion.
Yeah, I want to add a couple things on top of that because I think everything that you said is spot on. Two other differences in why I think this works this year. And actually, you just mentioned one of them. So if and when Ross Barkley gets fit, Notably, where was Ross Barkley playing this year? Not as a sitting midfielder like he was when Villa brought him in, but the number 10 role again, back to where he was playing as he kind of came up. And he too has it does not have the athleticism that he did when he was coming up at Everton and was so exciting in that role. Does he look a little fitter this year? Sure. But another player like Yori, who I think any Villa fan would tell you is not necessarily on the pitch for his pace, for his athletic ability, even for necessarily his dribbling, although both of them can certainly carry the ball into space. So it's not just a Yori thing. I think that it's a tactical thing. You mentioned Amadou Onana. The other player who I think makes this work more is actually someone who we've been increasingly praising this year on this podcast, John McGinn, because John McGinn made a concerted effort in the offseason to trim down, to add a little bit of extra quickness and pace. And so him on the right wing as the year has gone on has proven not to be the liability that it was last year or even in the first, let's say, handful of games this year when Villa weren't playing well. He has a different role where he is able to carry the ball deep into space, hold it up a little bit, create for others. So there isn't necessarily as much athleticism needed from the 10 because you're getting more from the right wing. When Villa turn to go in transition, they still have three guys that are ready to run ahead of Yuri Tielemans for him to pass to. Last year, that was less. It was Morgan Rogers and Ollie Watkins. That was it. The other one, though, is something that you and I actually probably haven't spent enough time on this season. I don't know when we'll get around to do it, so maybe this is the time to talk about it. But the change in buildup that Villa are implementing. So prior, when Yori had found himself in this role, and honestly, prior when he had even struggled a little bit as more of that 8, we had Boubacar Kamara dropping into the back line to create a back 3 in buildup. And with different tactical wrinkles, Matty Cash and the left back kind of tucking in a little bit more defensively, not necessarily bombing on as aggressively. He doesn't need to do that. And so what that means is that Yori in the 10 spot or even Amadou Onana in the 8 spot don't need to cover as much ground dropping back to create now that 2 in midfield and then stepping up into that 10 spot into attack. They can all play a little bit more in their area of influence. So not necessarily needing to do that extra running. I had said previously that left them too exposed. If there was a turnover, they were kind of caught in between two positions, didn't necessarily know where to be. So I think that change in our defensive shape to bring those outside backs in and not require Kamara to then tuck in as we turn to build up, free him up first off more than anything, and now he actually scores a goal. But I think too that allows Yori to kind of stay in place a little bit more in the 10 and create a little bit more. So I think that it's as much tactical as it is Yori and maybe some of the other players around him playing a little bit more effectively.
Yeah, that's a good call. And John McGinn, as soon as you started talking, I said, geez, I didn't even mention that McGinn is so much more aggressive and effective in carrying the ball down the wing. Slim down in every place but one, just for the record. He still ain't slimmed down where it counts.
Still got a round old rump, that one.
That's right. But again, it's almost to the point now with McGinn that he plays so well, so consistently. You and I talked about it on Sunday, that he is, you can't take him off the pitch at this point, because he does everything you ask of him and he does it well. And I think this may be the most effective he's been as a player. And that's saying something considering what he's done for the club for the last 5 years, 6 years, whatever it's been, so I want to take a minute just to praise the way he's played, because he's been so good this year, probably a little bit overshadowed by Morgan Rogers because of the goals, and maybe even Matty Cash to an extent because of the goals that Cash has scored, but it's the hold up play, it's the defensive work rate, it's the ability to move the ball down the wing at pace that I didn't know he had, to be honest with you. that we haven't seen before. Uh, and to have that guy playing the way he is as your captain, you you love everything about it. And he and Cash, I think, are emblematic of the type of player that Unai Emery wants. And maybe Tielemans is another good example there too. Just guys who do everything that they are asked by the manager, working both sides in attack and defense relentlessly without ever letting up. Like, you can see how this group sort of is developing this collective belief together, and I think it's led by a handful of guys, that are doing it on both sides of the pitch, led by McGinn.
Yeah, great shout on you. So let's just kind of move on from there and get into the match analysis. And another tactical thing that I wanted to talk about. I said this to you in the pub. You can see the change from the first 5 matches of the year to where Villa are at now, and it's subtle. Villa are still trying to dominate possession in a lot of these games. They are trying to minimize opportunities for the opponent to counter them. However, the way in which they're doing that, the way in which they're moving forward up the pitch has changed slightly. They are a little bit more direct. What you and I were calling out for over the first 5 matches was Villa are best when Pau Torres, when Yuri are able to break the lines. Now, coincidentally, neither of those guys were all that prominent in early season Aston Villa due to Tyrone Mings and Yuri Tielemans' injury. And so we've been able to see since they've come in that Villa aren't necessarily just going side to side and slowly inching up the pitch, not really able to be incisive and break down a team that ultimately recedes and kind of forms a low block. Now you see much more intention to go forward, to break the lines with those passes. And so, we said early on that Unai Emery is not stupid, right? There's something that he's trying to teach them, get them to do that they are not quite doing yet, that's not quite clicking. And so I think what we see now and what we saw versus Manchester United in spots, but definitely against Arsenal, definitely against, Man City, so on and so forth, is that Villa are now mixing that patient build up with more incisiveness, with more determination to break the lines, to spring more guys, to get some people on the half turn and get the defense turning and running at their own goal. And that, what were both of Morgan Rogers' goals yesterday, right? Him getting the ball in a little bit behind, him running at the Manchester United defense, have them kind of turning at their own goal. I mean, awful performance by Lenny Yoro, and he's getting crushed in the
Yeah.
media for not getting tight enough. But still, that's created by balls into space, not necessarily a slow buildup, mixing in that fast, and then giving us an opportunity for them to create their own calamity
Yep.
and taking advantage of that.
Yeah, and Euro did play poorly, but and it that kind of lends itself to what you and I have been talking about for what feels like weeks now, that eventually teams are going to have to focus on closing players out much more so than they have, because you can't let Morgan Rogers shoot from 20 yards, because it's going to go in the back of the net at this point, despite the XG rated opportunity, which I don't
0.04, by the way.
I don't disagree with that, because most players, it's probably like a 2 in 50 shot, right?
I mean, Heung-min Son was always this for Tottenham. I think he
Yeah.
was the king of overperforming his expected goals. Go back and look at it. Go check out FBref. But like every single year, Heung-min Son would outperform his XG because he was such a good, classy finisher.
Yep.
I mean, also played out on the left wing.
Yep.
Also was able to kind of strike one from distance a little bit.
Yeah. So
Comparisons there.
even if Euro closes down there, right? You have to credit Rodgers' ability to run at him and then drag him across the box, because that's what he does, or at least the corner of the box there on both goals. It's pretty much the same goal. He comes and he moves in toward the goal, but stays at a relative distance and lets it rip from about 20 yards out, give or take. And I, I just, I think that is going to continue to be effective as long as defenses allow that to happen. And you're going, like we've talked about for several pods now, you're going to see teams stay much tighter on Morgan Rodgers than they have previously, because of how lethal he's proving to be from distance. But I agree with you in terms of the tactical setup. The other thing that Villa have done, which you and I have been calling out for 18 months now, and they've probably, like you said, been working on it in the training ground and just wasn't ready, is you're seeing either a big switch where there's a big ball across to the other side of the pitch, or a switch where the passes are coming much more quickly than they were previously from right, middle, left, or back that the other way. So you're moving the defense much more than they were in the first 5 games of this season. So I think that's a big part of why the attack has been more effective, even while still shooting from distance and a relatively low expected goal outcome on some of those shots. But you can see why the defense is more uncomfortable than they've been in the past.
Yeah, so Chris, I'm gonna do my job as the lukewarm podcaster of the two of us on this lukewarmy of lukewarm shows, and just say, as much as we want to hype up Morgan Rodgers and hype up Aston Villa's tactical evolution throughout the year, and those are both extremely accurate points. I don't want to diminish those in saying this. Let's also not pretend that Villa dominated this game from start to finish. In my opinion, Ruben Amorim was probably right when he said that Manchester United were on the day the better team. What did you see from them? Because we went into this talking about the fact that in terms of expected goals, Manchester United are the second highest creators in the team. I think, I think when I showed up said that this was the clash of the highest XG overperformers versus the highest XG underperformers, or lowest underperformers, depending on how you want to say that.
Yeah.
Despite the players that they were missing, Villa probably started the first 10, 15 minutes on top. And then this was a lot of Manchester United. They looked pretty good for a large portion of this game.
I think if you think that Villa dominated that from start to finish, you're terribly biased and wrong. I think that on the day, Manchester United created the better chances on the whole. They didn't finish them, and Villa did, and that again remains the difference, right? That's the difference between a good team or a not so good team, or a good team and a great team, is that one team finished, the other didn't. Like the goal that United got was an absolute gift, and they, to their credit, took advantage of it, right? But Matty Cash, my Polish brother, who I love deeply, played a terrible ball that pretty much ended up being an assist.
It's funny. Did it look to you almost a carbon copy of what Ezri Konsa did, where you're like,
yeah,
cutting back, you almost inadvertently knock it with your wrong foot?
He did. Yeah, I think
directly
so.
into the defender's path. I mean,
Yeah.
it was weird to see that look so similar another week in a row.
I think there is, as much as I love to see the team play out from the back and draw their opponents forward to create space behind, I still think there's a time to realize that, hey, you just got to get rid of it and you got to get it up the pitch. And I think sometimes the Villa defense isn't quite there yet in terms of that innate ability to understand when it's time to just hoof it. Because sometimes it's okay to do that, and relieve pressure. And I think that was one of those situations because Cash was under it, and he just played a terrible ball. But again, United finished that one. They did not finish any of the other chances they had. A couple of very nice saves from Emi Martinez. Don't get me wrong, because he is another player that is back to, or seems to be back to, playing at his absolute best at the moment. But I think that Ruben Amorim is probably right that they created the better opportunities. They probably played better on the whole on the day, but again, this game boils down to who makes the most of the opportunities they are given, and in this case, it was Morgan Rogers and Aston Villa.
Yeah, I mean, I would arguably say, like, listen, if the game ended 3-3, I wouldn't necessarily say that was unfair. Rogers had that flick behind his heel where he was very close, could have gone in. Weirdly, despite that seeming to me as his most difficult chance, I think the proximity and the fact that there's no defender between him and the goal, that was like 0.78 XG. I mean, like, borderline.
It looked closer than it did in real time too, right? Like,
yeah. So that kind of is something that points out a flaw in the XG system, that was so high, when I think eye test tells you that is a very difficult.
He's back healing it.
Yeah, it's definitely behind him. Anyway,
yeah.
Put that aside. That could be 3 for Villa. They had, I think it was Seshko in one-on-one with Emi Martinez. Beautiful save by Emi. We'll give them that. And then the Cunha header, where I don't know how he puts that wide.
He missed that
not even directly at Emi Martinez. Could have been the third. Outside of that, were there really great opportunities either way? I'm not totally sure. The only one that really comes to my mind is, and this is probably just because I'm a Villa fan, Ollie Watkins should have taken the opportunity when in on goal in the first half. Once again, I think proving my point that you can't even necessarily look at his stats to say people aren't giving him opportunities. He's not creating the opportunities when eye test says that he has them.
So that one is 100%. And I agree with you. I agree 100%. And that was poorly said by me, but that won't go down as an XG miss. But everybody that has kicked a ball can tell you that when he collected the ball and got a step, and he actually, his first touch was beautiful.
Very good.
Took the ball away from the defender onto his left foot, but he very clearly didn't want to shoot with his left, right? And I think that's part of the problem, because he tried to bring it back to his right, and that then slowed up and allowed two defenders to collapse onto him. Whereas in a fully confident Ollie Watkins, who's 100% feeling like he can score from anywhere, he'll rip with that left foot and just see what happens. And he needed to let that go and try and score. Like that was his best chance, and he didn't take the shot. And so that won't go down as an XG miss, but it should, right? Because he just didn't pull the trigger. And that's the only bad point. I thought we were going to save this for bad points, because that's the only real bad point I've got from this game, is that Watkins is just, he seems to lack confidence right now, and will not, in this case, pull the trigger when everybody you and I were with eight other people in the pub watching that game that were Villa fans. Every single one of us shouted shoot when he got to the box, right? Every single one of us. And only one guy didn't, and it was Ollie Watkins.
I like that you say that there were 8 other people in the pub with us that were Villa fans, as if there was anyone else in the pub with us at all.
That's fair. I mean, yeah.
Chris, two things that I want to talk to you about remaining in this before we get to good points, bad points. First one, just because you did the research, I want to give you a platform to say it to the interwebs, to our dozens of fans worldwide. The ref with the Bruno hamstring. Now, granted, hold on. Before we go all crazy partisan Villa on this, let's point out the fact that not to pat myself on the back, I was right. Bruno did not come out for the second half. He saved them a substitution window by gutting it out to halftime. So we are not here to say that Bruno was not injured, that he was faking it or anything like that. Emram has come out. He's going to be out for weeks. Clear tore something, has a minor tear in his hamstring. Hate the guy. Almost dropped the F word on here. I will say hate the guy. Never will forgive him. But I also have to respect having torn my own hamstring and knowing how much that thing hurt. Powering through that to at least get to have to save his team the window. What you're about to talk about is the refereeing of the situation.
Yes. So I will start by saying that Bruno was injured 100%. He was injured and clearly was injured on the play. The issue I have is the following, and I looked up the FA laws because I wanted to make sure I was right about this.
You also invited them to come on the podcast. That
I did. I mean, I always do. So I emailed the FA and PGMOL to come on the pod. They are not here, which we can only take as they admit that they made a mistake because they're not here to defend it. I don't know. That's just me. But no, so I wanted to look to make sure that I was right because I didn't want to go onto this podcast without the proper research. So Bruno, what happened, what the plays Alex is referencing was somewhere around the 41st minute. Bruno comes up lame with a hamstring, right? Play is stopped with that hamstring injury, which I immediately thought was strange because you never see that, right? And you thought that McGinn kicked the ball out of bounds to be sporting, and that then it was going to be a Manchester United throw. But no, play was stopped for the injury, and then a drop ball given to Manchester United. But Bruno never left the pitch. So FA laws state that the referee has discretion to stop play for a head injury or other serious injury where a player needs to leave the field of play. So if the referee is going to stop play for a hamstring injury, and by the way, that could be a play where it's serious enough that Bruno needs to leave the field of play and needs to stop and play needs to stop. But Bruno didn't ever come off the pitch. So that's the mistake by the referee. If he's going to stop play there.
We see this a million times. The player gets back up, says, I want to carry on. Ref says no. He ushers him over to the sideline. He walks over. Play restarts, and then 30 seconds later, he kind of waves him to come on.
Right, exactly. So if he's going to stop play there because Manchester United is in possession, Bruno's in possession, if the referee's going to stop play, then then Bruno has to leave the field of play, and it's then given as a drop to Manchester United. In this case, nobody left the pitch, and we just stopped play because Bruno pulled up lame. And I am not suggesting it's anti-Villa. Again, I am not that guy. I'm suggesting that it's incompetence because it was Michael Oliver, I believe, that was the referee.
I think so, yeah.
You have to know that you can't do that and then not make the player leave the pitch. And this, though, is the reason why people think that Manchester United or other Big Six teams get these calls because Bruno comes up with an injury and play is stopped. It's not a head injury. He doesn't leave the field of play. but plays still stopped and a drop given. Bruno steps on Ezri Konsa's ankle, and he is given a penalty 5 years ago. And I will never forget that, right? So like, but that's why people think there's a bias, is because of things like that. Like, how did that happen? And I'm looking into the camera once again. PGMOL. Explain to me what that was. Someone say what happened out there. Why did play stop? Bruno didn't have to leave the pitch. And then a drop ball was given to Manchester United. Explain that call to me and everyone else, and explain why it happened. That's all I'm asking. Do it. You don't. Nobody does.
I have nothing to add. You killed it. So the other thing that I want to talk about, Chris, is with all the money that they spend on transfers, with all that they are worth, how wild is it to say, as they were chasing the game, as Villa was looking to see this game out, the quality and depth that Villa were able to bring on in terms of Daniel Malin, in terms of Luca Dean, in terms of, I mean, hell, even Lamar Bogard, with the experience that he has at this point in his career. Evan Gasson, say what you will about him as a player, 35 million, very highly regarded coming out of France. Meanwhile, United is turning to the son of Darren Fletcher and some other teenager trying to get something. Now, one of them had a rocket of a foot on it, but still, that they don't have more players of quality that they can turn to. Just a testament to how bad their recruitment has been.
I think it's twofold, right? I think maybe even more than that. But number one, it's a testament to the recruitment by Aston Villa and the ability to bring in players in challenging financial circumstances, but also from Manchester United's side, it's not just the recruitment and development that's the problem. I do sort of think that monster debt at the top, it's 971 million pound, give or take. I don't know where it is today, right? That was a couple of weeks ago. That starts with offshore Jim, as our friends on the Price of Football pod call him. That's what he cares about, right? He cares about that number because he's trying to get return on his investment, and he's saddled with this almost £1 billion debt owed to, by the way, the Glazers, apparently the smartest business people on earth, who built this empire to just pay themselves money on interest, essentially. I think that debt and the necessary amount it takes to service that debt, because they do have to pay a certain amount of that every year, or else it counts in their PSR spend, or now squad cost ratio. So they do have to service that debt. If they don't service that debt, their books are affected. Okay. Now they have massive revenue to be able to support that. And it should not and will not be a problem, despite what Offshore Jim says. But that whole thing, I think you're talking about rot from the top, to be honest with you. And what you see now is a club with all the resources in the world that doesn't want to spend to repair the stadium or renovate the stadium. They want public money to get a new stadium in Manchester, and they may get it. That may happen based on the reports that I've heard. But you have an English owner that operates almost as an American, and is trying to get other people to finance his debts because that's what he's got right now. Long way to say, I think that bleeds all the way down from the manager to the scouts to the recruits to development to everything. I'm a big believer in culture, and it's part of the reason that I am so impressed with what Emery and the rest of the management has done. Everybody's a unified front here, at Aston Villa. Ownership down. It is Unai Emery's way, and that's what he's going to get, and that's what the club is going to represent. It's a difficult thing to do, and they've gotten everybody virtually to buy into that culture. If you're, and that, I do think that's part of the reason for the success of the club over the last 4 years. If you have a fractured board, a stressed board due to the financial regulations, due to the financial obligations of the club, you have to pay the folks here in Tampa, a bunch of money every year. That like it reflects all throughout the organization, and you've got furloughed workers in the cafeteria and all those things. Like it just, I think you see now, this is sort of that this is the development of that culture or lack thereof, where now you've got nobody who can come in despite all the money you've spent, how many billions of, or how many hundreds of millions of pounds, I should say, and you're bringing in two 18-year-olds to try and chase the game against Aston Villa, while Aston Villa are bringing in players who have previously played in European comps before they got here.
Yeah.
That was a really long answer. I'm really sorry. It was especially long-winded, even for me. But I got going and I couldn't stop.
No, it's fair, and you brought in a lot of good points there. I think what it begs the question of, and if this were a Manchester United podcast, or if Mark Goldbridge wants to come on, we could talk about this later. It, as crappy as that seems as a managerial philosophy, you can't argue with the fact that Manchester United do seem to be on the way up, and maybe that's just a testament to Ruben Amorim and how quality he is as a manager. But they are certainly better than they were last year. They're doing that with a depleted squad. They moved 3 guys off to AFCON and still playing well.
And one suspended.
And yet you're right. The vibe around the club itself just feels toxic.
Yep.
And, with all the money they have, with all the money that they invest, ultimately that doesn't change the fact that the crux of the problem is, like, they should have so many players that at no point are they bringing on 18-year-olds unless those are 18-year-old phenoms.
Yeah.
I don't think either of these guys are 18-year-old phenoms.
Right.
So Chris, with that, let's move to good points, bad points, because we've definitely said all we can say about this game. We'll start with good points because we certainly are on a high. We need to temper expectations with the bad points kind of closing this. Chris, the good point that we haven't mentioned yet, or maybe that just bears mentioning again, 10 wins in a row. It hasn't been done since 1905 or whatever it was, 40.
I think 1914.
1914.
Yeah.
Emery, first manager to have 2 10-win streaks in Lord knows how long. 6 straight in the Premier League now.
Yep. Haven't lost since November 1st.
Yep. I was listening to Claret and Blue. They listed the last time we've done 7 in a row and 8 in a row and so on and so forth. And I didn't write it down, so we're not going to do the same thing. But is there a game that you wouldn't at least say that we have a shot in?
Do you want to bet against us?
I didn't want to be cliche with it, but yes, that's where I was going.
Yeah. I'll be cliche. You can blame me.
Yeah.
But so I think that Morgan Rogers said that, right? Not the "do you want to bet against us" thing, but he said we feel like we can win every game, and they're playing like it, you know. So and right now, who do you take them? Like who beats them? That you say straight up, these two teams line up, and you say, oh yeah, that's not a win for Villa. There isn't anybody, in my opinion. You know, at least not the way they're playing, right?
So, Chris, as we transition, you say Morgan Rogers, you say the way we're playing, and I think the way we're playing is the key difference here. But I still want to list this as a question. We slammed Steven Gerrard for basically putting a team out there and relying on moments of magic to win games. To a certain extent, are we not just winning with the Steven Gerrard formula? And I asked the question that way intentionally, not necessarily as an indication of my beliefs.
Right. I can understand. I'm gonna be much more calm than I think you want me to be on this, because I can understand why you'd ask that question. It makes sense. Like it's low percentage shots that are going in, right? But I would only counter with two things. One, defensively, outside of a couple of mistakes, Villa have largely played very well. I mean, the Cash mistake, the Konsa mistake. Emi Martinez is playing out of his mind right now. But in attack, you and I have talked about this for a long time now, this being a feature, not a bug. And what's happening is Villa are taking the opportunities given to them and finishing them. And maybe they don't always finish at the rate they are. But the counter to that is maybe Morgan Rogers is that good, you know, where you can't leave him to shoot. You can't leave him 3 yards to shoot from 15, 20, 25 yards out, because he'll put it in the corner. Right. So I don't think it's moments of magic as much as they're just taking what's given to them and making the best play available. I think if you want to talk about the biggest tactical difference between Steven Gerrard and Unai Emery, it'd be this: not a single team, not one team Aston Villa played when Gerrard was here, especially toward the end of his tenure, was sitting deep and inviting Villa to attack. Right. That's now what most teams do, because Villa are so vulnerable on the counter in a lot of spaces, or that seems to be the best way to get at them, and because they've got so many great players up front here that have really become their best self. Morgan Rogers being the most poignant example, but also Emi Buendia. Matty Cash, again, our wonder goal scorer. But so you have players that are not afraid to rip from distance because they're filled with confidence and they're given space because the defenders are set up in such a way to give them that space.
So you said, I think, where my thoughts are as well. I will more succinctly say that I think we need to draw a line between moments of magic and moments of brilliance. Magic happens out of nowhere. You don't expect it. It comes from nothing. Moments of brilliance are intelligently taking advantage of something, using your smarts, using your tactics, using your strategy to create something amazing. And I think Steven Gerrard rolled the balls out there and just said, like, go do something with it. That's a moment of magic.
Yep.
Whereas, like you said, this is a feature, not a bug. There is clearly a structured organizational plan for how Villa are going to attack, and they're trying to create these long-range efforts. There are other ways in which they are creating opportunities. These are engineered engineered moments of magic, which to me then falls into that moment of brilliance category. And so that's where I think the difference is between a Steven Gerrard team and a Unai Emery team.
Why didn't you just say that instead of making me go through all that rigmarole?
I wanted to give you a shot to be the smart one. So Chris, that did not transition us into bad points because we both think it's a good point the way that we go. Bad points are hard to find, but I guess if you want to be nitpicky, I'll call this out and just get your 2 cents on it. Of our 10 wins in a row, 8 of them have been by 1 goal. Only 4 wins this year, and Villa have won a lot this year. Only 4 wins across all competitions are by more than 1 goal. 2 in the Europa League, 2 in the Premier League. We know them, Fulham and Bournemouth, both teams not doing well. So, Chris, when you combine that with obviously the poor expected goal differential, even our previous conversation about engineered moments of brilliance, do you think at all that there are some warning signs here about, the wheels falling off or anything like that?
I don't think there will be wheels falling off, but I think there could be a regression to a little bit more of a regression to the mean, so to speak. But the counter to that, I'll say what I always say: Emery would rather win 3-2 than 1-0. And
Well, that still would fall under this premise of
I understand.
the attempt to win by 1 goal leaves you open to.
But I guess what I'm saying is that in theory you could, go up. In this case, they did not go up 2-0, right? But if they were up 2-0, I still think an Emery-led team is going to be in danger of conceding because he's always going to be attacking, and he's never going to sit, and he's never going to let just fully invite pressure and sit and do that for a half hour. So to, for an example, but I think yes, I think there's a potential for a regression to something closer to what you're seeing in XG and the fact that there's so many 1-goal wins. But like I've said before, 1-goal wins are still wins. So that 3 points are 3 points. It doesn't matter. When the Chiefs won the Super Bowl 2 years ago, 3 years ago, whatever it was, they had one of the lowest point differentials in terms of plus minus in the NFL, but they still won the Super Bowl because they won the games that counted when they counted. And that's the end. If you win, nothing else matters. And now we're almost halfway through the season, right? So if this is not sustainable, we should see that regression soon. Or was the first 5 games the regression, right? So to speak. Was that not? Can we not factor that in?
I'd been saying for a while there could be regression upwards, and I think there continues to be.
Yeah.
It also depends on what your window is for regression. Oftentimes, performances like this can be kept up for a season, and you look at, or at least for a majority of the season, look at Nottingham Forest and how long they kind of outperformed their supposed XG last year. And now the wheels did fall off over the last month, and they catapulted out of the Champions League. But to use your example of NFL football, you see this quite often where teams can be very successful in 1-score games. The Chiefs were undefeated, I believe, in 1-score games last year. This year, they don't make the playoffs.
Yeah.
Last year, the year before, the Vikings won 10 1-score games in a row. This year, they're trash. 3, 4, 5, 6 wins. So the regression doesn't necessarily need to happen in that one season. It could mean that it's going to happen next season or the season after that. Now, I will couch all of this in something that I've said repeatedly and will continue to say until I'm blue in the face. Unai Emery teams always seem to buck some sort of statistical trend. There is always some kind of statistical anomaly each year that Villa are good, whether that is the ungodly number of times that we caught teams offsides when he first started, for example.
Yep.
So this could be another feature that is just a cycle of Villa under Unai Emery's evolution, something that he's going to ride with for a little while before he makes other tactical changes, whether it's later in the year, next year, something like that. He's a smart enough manager to make that happen. And to your point then about stacking up wins, the important point is we have points in the bank. So largest implication on the season, we are now 7 points up on fourth place. We have Chelsea and Arsenal coming over the course of the next week. Chelsea on Saturday, and then Arsenal on 3 days after that. We could lose both those games and still be in third place.
Yep.
Which is wild.
Yep.
So, Chris, we've talked about all this, and before we get to previewing that Chelsea game, I just want to give a shout out to XG Philosophy. So, we've spent a lot of time attacking him on this podcast. A lot of Villa fans have spent
Attacking
time
is a strong word.
attacking. For us is a strong word. Villa fans on Twitter, not so much. He's even now getting called out by the official Villa account, highlighting Morgan Rogers' last 3 goals and their XGs. He, she, they, whoever is behind the XG Philosophy account, I will admit, they clearly have a sense of humor and know what they're doing with all of this. They posted many a meme. I personally loved the Morgan Rogers one after they tweeted out that he missed the 0.78 chance. It was his face on Michael Jordan's body saying, and I took that personally after he scored the goal. So listen, Villarati, XG Philosophy does not have an agenda against Aston Villa. We are the team that flies in the face of everything they tweet most often, and so they're going to call that out. And the more that you attack them, the more that they're going to attack back. I personally don't mind. I think it's quite funny, and I kind of want to see it keep happening. But yeah, I just wanted to give them a little shout out. They're clearly, I think, after the game on Sunday, not taking this as seriously as we thought they may have been.
Yeah, I don't think they are either. And again, I will say I am a fan of XG. I'm in terms of a metric. My problem is the online world, not even the folks or a guy or a gal. I assume it's a guy. I assume it's the same guy who wrote the book that run the XG Philosophy Twitter account. But fans that just think, well, XG says this team had 2.1 XG and this team had 0.93. So this team needs to win. That's not a good way to look at football or anything for that matter. You have to watch the sport with your eyes and see what that tells you, because yes, maybe they hit a wonder goal or whatever, but you still that you play the sport in real life. It's not just on a spreadsheet, so XG is a good metric to use to potentially see how things are going to play throughout a season. But it's not just live and die. This team had better XG. This team didn't. This team wins. That's a dumb way to look at it. And that's my only problem with the online world, even more so than just the metric itself.
Agreed. So let's put the online world aside for a second and talk about the real world where Villa will be playing Chelsea. No more Boxing Day games on the 27th of December. Chris, so far this season, Chelsea, as I just mentioned, are 4th, 7 points back of Aston Villa, clearly off the title challenge, which I thought they were going to be much better contenders after the Club World Cup. Still probably too reliant on Cole Palmer, who has been injured for a large portion of this season. After a great November where Enzo Maresca won Manager of the Year and apparently started getting shouts to take over the Man City job from Pep, they've been awful in December. They only beat Everton and Cardiff. They've lost to Atalanta, Leeds. They drew to Bournemouth and Newcastle, bunch of struggling teams. This is a really weird one that I don't know how to predict, how to analyze. We can get into their style of play in a second, but you just think about the players that they have. João Pedro seemingly playing great. Liam Delap, obviously think very highly of him from his time at Leeds last year. Pedro Neto, very dangerous. Garnacho, probably have some different thoughts about him. Cole Palmer's back. Uh, Enzo, Moises Caicedo, arguably player of the season, not named Erling Haaland.
Yep.
Defense maybe a little bit less so. Robert Sanchez certainly turning a corner in goal as well. Like, they've got players,
Mm-hmm.
and yet at times it just seems to not really work.
I agree. And I think I had the same thought when I was looking over their team and their statistics. Like, it's just player after player after player after player after player that you're
By the way, we
seeing.
didn't even mention Esteval, who might be the most highly rated, most valuable teenager in the world right
Yeah.
now.
Like, it's just
Looks incredible.
going down the lineup, going down their starting 11 and bench. You're just going, wow, that guy can play. That guy can play. That guy can play. That guy can play. And like, I want to call out Caicedo in particular because he might be right now. The team itself is struggling, but he might be playing the best football of his career
Mhm.
at this moment, and he is incredible. Like, we all knew he was very good. I think when he first came to Chelsea, it maybe looked like a little bit of an overpay because he seemed to struggle to fit in and all that. But he is playing his absolute socks off right now, and he is one of the best players in Europe, if not the whole world, at his position. But boy, they have really struggled, and so I think you can question now. I hate to put it on the manager entirely because it's not, I don't think, all his fault. But at some point, when you have all this talent, and I know there have been some injuries and things like that, but you have all this talent and you have all this ability to bring players on that I mean, they're starting 11. Probably half the teams in the Prem would kill for the backups, that they have. Their Europa League squad last year, so I just I wonder where the disconnect is, and I don't have a good answer for it, because they have flatly looked bad, in the month of December, and they look miles off where they need to be.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about how they play. Uh, 4-2-3-1. They definitely build it up through the back. Lot of their defensive line are their highest passers. They are hugely dominant in possession. I think they average 58%, which means a lot of games they're 60 plus, 70 plus. So they really try and keep a stranglehold on it. Uh Maresca, probably a much more pragmatic manager for Chelsea than we're used to. Less Pep, probably more Unai Emery to an extent. Uh, they attack through the middle, short passes that ultimately build up to kind of longer through balls. It is interesting how much they push to the middle, kind of like Aston Villa. Again, with that possession, we're looking at teams with fairly similar styles trying to exert their control on a game. Um, what I noticed most was the splits between their wins and losses in terms of what they generate offensively. And maybe this is a no duh, but games they win, you're looking at 18, 20 shots, 5, 8, 10 plus on target. And then games they lose, it plummets all the way to like 11 shots, 2 on target. And so that to me, I couldn't necessarily find the same split home versus away. It was really versus a win versus loss. And so it seems like when they're good, but when they're bad, they're bad.
Yeah,
And,
yeah.
I'm not really sure what the cause or rhyme or reason for that is.
I think that's a great call, and good looking out from you. You hit the point that I wanted to make, which is they seem to play fairly similarly to Aston Villa and drive toward the middle, and they have the players to attack and to win those one-on-ones. So I think the key in this game is going to be which manager and which team is able to control the ball the way they want. And I think it's going to be interesting to see how Emery and company adjust to this game, because I don't think Villa is going to be able to control the ball as well through the middle as they have in previous games. I think that Chelsea are very well set up in the midfield to be able to play with Villa, to be able to knock them off the ball. But I think you mentioned it a little bit previously. I think they may be a little vulnerable on the back end. So if Villa can get the ball into positions where they're in the final third, I think that's going to be where Villa will see the most success. And the question to me then becomes, does Emery slow play it and draw Chelsea forward by holding the ball at the back and in their own end to create space behind? And I think that may be what they try to do. I'm not 100% sure, but I think that may be the best way, the most effective way to attack Chelsea, because I think you're going to have a tough time going through the middle, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. I think if we turn to kind of the Villa side of things, certainly need to be ready to concede a little bit more of the ball, especially considering the fact that Villa are away for this. So back-to-back matches in London with Chelsea and Arsenal. Draw them in and then try to attack quickly, try and turn them over and get in behind, get them kind of turned the other way. The other hallmark of Chelsea under Enzo Maresca that we didn't talk about earlier is that they are highly undisciplined. Weird
Say that.
number of red cards.
Insane. They've got 7 red cards on the
Yeah,
season.
and again, something else that I'm not sure whether this is a managerial issue or just a players that they recruit issue or an inexperience issue or something like that. You need to interview the players and tell me. But what it does say is that if you can get in behind, cause a little bit of the mayhem that Villa seem to thrive on, Chelsea might make some rash challenges and get some cards and allow you to gain a foothold in the game that way. So with them not necessarily being on the best form, them having that rash streak in them, I think you need to play calm, you need to play patient. And the longer it's 0-0, or if you can nick an early one and go up 1-0, I think the better chance you have to be successful, because they might be a little bit more liable to lose their heads.
That's a great call, because when I was doing the research, I actually meant to call that out, because I said, boy, that seems like an insane number of red cards. And it is. It's an insane number of red cards.
It is an insane number of red cards. So lineup wise, I'll go first. The interesting thing with this is there are a couple ways Emery can go. And I'm curious what you would do. Not what you think Emery is going to do, because we'll get to that when you make your own lineup. But you, Christopher Condit, I see 2 ways that you can look at this. You could go all out for Chelsea, get 3 points, and essentially say, you know what, 3 days later, I'm just going to punt Arsenal at the Emirates. Chances of getting points there not high. I'm still looking down. So I'd rather have 3 points than 0 or potentially 2 draws, right?
Mm-hmm.
You could say, I'm Aston Villa. I'm playing great. I've won 10 in a row. I am just going to play my strongest lineup in both games, because this Christmas season is not necessarily as hectic as years past have been. We're not playing every 3 days. We've had a week off. We had a week off before that. So I could play my first team lineup on Saturday and again 3 days later on the 30th. Option 3 is you say, we spoke earlier about how Villa have a little bit of depth. I have depth. I'm gonna hedge my bets, rotate a little bit in both of these games, understanding that I'm risking potentially coming away with nothing because I'm not playing my best team in both. Which way would you go?
So I had the same conversation with myself when we started looking at lineups for this, and I would go all out for Chelsea. I would, because I think that's the most winnable game. And I think that if you take a point off of Arsenal, that's good. That's a good result away. So that's where I would go. But so the lineup, you didn't actually give your lineup, by the way.
No, I know. I wanted you to answer that question before I gave my
All
lineup
right. So
because
now,
that
are you going to give
that's
your lineup
really
now? Okay.
yes.
All right.
So I too would probably go all out for Chelsea and then play for a draw against Arsenal, maybe try and just sucker punch them to get one away, but I'm not going to the Emirates to try to play them off the pitch.
Right.
I don't think that we're going to do that twice to Arsenal in a month. So my lineup for Chelsea: Emi Martinez in goal. The three of the back four picks themselves just due to availability. So it's going to be Cash, Konsa, um, and Lindelof. I actually think that Luka Dean, though, could come back in for the Chelsea game. And the reason why, it does seem like Matson has kind of flipped this a little bit to be first choice. But the one thing that has happened repeatedly over these past few games that Ian Matson has started is, as I've said before, tricky, but most importantly, quick, fast wingers that have seemed to cause Luka Dean a little bit more problems. We've used Ian Matson's pace. Pedro Neto, not necessarily the kind of guy that's going to get in behind you as much as the one that's going to be tricky in front of you. So I think that Luka Dean actually could be more effective here defensively than Ian Matson.
Plus, you figure that Matson's going to play against
And then
Arsenal.
Matson plays against Arsenal anyway. So there's like a little bit of rotation without necessarily rotating the team heavily. Kamara Onana, do you potentially bring Bogart in there? I think that is going to be an indication of what Unai thinks he could get at Arsenal. If you bring Bogart in, let's say for Onana or for Kamara, I would probably bring him in for Onana though, just given his injury issues. I probably don't want him playing 2 full 90 minutes in 4 days. And then in front, John McGinn, Morgan Rogers, Yori, and Ollie Watkins. And so I think against Arsenal, you might see like Emi Buendia come in or Daniel Malin come in.
We have the same lineup. I like the big question to me is what happens at left back. And if, like you said, if they go with that triumvirate now that we're going to call it, the Onana, Kamara, Tielemans together, and so far it's working. So I think they'll stick with it because
Yep.
I do think that Emery's going to approach this like you and I expect, and that is that this is the game he's going to try to get 3, and then he's gonna see what he can do at the Emirates 3 days later.
Yeah, if Villa can get a semi-early lead, do we see some earlier subs
Sure.
than maybe we otherwise would? Maybe they start coming in 55, 60 as opposed to somewhere between 65 and 80 minutes.
Yeah.
I certainly think that that's a possibility, but I do of these games in this stretch that we're in, to take another 3 points off of Chelsea and potentially increase that gap on 4th place.
Mm-hmm.
Because if I just quickly look at the table here, I think with Crystal Palace losing, okay, so Liverpool are also in 5th on 29 points, but obviously they're not guaranteed a win in any game that they're playing nowadays either. If you can potentially open a 10-point gap on 4th place going into the new year, that's huge.
Yep.
Getting anything off of Arsenal again at that point is gravy, I think.
So what do you think for a scoreline? You did your lineup first. Do your scoreline first.
Oh, I go first. Okay.
Yeah.
Listen, Chris, at this point, who am I to buck a trend? 2-1 Villa.
Ain't no stopping us now. Yeah, I'm the same. 2-1 on the road at the bridge. I think it's 2-1 Villa. I think because Aston Villa are in form and Chelsea are not, it makes sense. I think the challenge, like I said, is going to come because they are very talented through the midfield in particular. And I think it's that in itself is going to present an interesting challenge for the Villa players. But I think right now, the way that Villa are playing, you cannot go into this thinking that they're going to lose.
I agree. Well, with that, Chris, anything else that you want to add?
I did not look
shout
up
out?
any. I didn't look up any YouTube shout outs. I want to give one quick shout out to
Just
my alma mater.
Big Walt. Shout out to
Shout
Big
out Big
Walt.
Walt. I want to give
Always
one quick shout out to my alma mater. John Carroll University played the Division III football, American football semifinals and lost to North Central over the weekend. It was a hell of a season, and I was really hoping that I'd have to drive up to Canton, Ohio, and see him play in the national championship in a couple of weeks. But unfortunately, not to be. But shout out John Carroll, onward on, mighty Blue Streaks.
Love that shout out. Well, Chris, then I guess there's nothing left to say, but Merry Christmas to you and your family. Merry Christmas and Happy Hanukkah to all the villains around the globe that listen to us. And Chris, as always, until this weekend, up the Villa.
Up the Villa.